With an entrepreneurship degree, you might think Brady had aspirations to jump outside of his family plumbing business.
I worked at Walmart for 2 months in high school. Other than that, this is the only job I've ever had. Really?
Not at all the case. From an early age, Brady always knew growing jolly plumbing was in his blood. Brady, thanks for joining us. You guys are out of the Cincinnati area, Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm pumped. We're in Northern Kentucky. So our office is in Wilder, Kentucky, just a little town about 5 minutes south of downtown Cincinnati. And we service greater Cincinnati.
You are a second generation plumber. Is that the kind of the right way to put it?
That's right. Yeah. So my dad started the business in 1979. So, the classic story, just growing up in the trades and seeing him do it. And then I came into the business in 2014, grew up working in the business, but more seriously in 2014 when I took over management of the business and then ultimately bought the business from him and my mom in 2017.
So in 1979, your dad was he a plumber right from the get-go, or how did he get into it? Do you know the background there?
Oh, yeah. Great question. We were just talking about this in our quarterly town hall. I love this story. So he went to NKU, Northern Kentucky University, and he was wanting to be a business guy. His dad sold insurance. He wanted to do something like that. He didn't know what it was, but he knew he'd be working in an office for the rest of his life. Didn't grow up in the trades. Dad didn't really do much. They would hire people to do stuff at their house, So he's living at home, and after about 3 months of not being able to find a job, he's looking at the newspaper, and there's a job for a plumber. And his dad was sitting next to him and looking with him, and he said, "What about that? There's a job as working." It was actually working in a plumbing office. And Dad said, "I'm not going to be a plumber. I don't want to be a plumber." And Grandpa was like, "Well, you've been sitting here for 3 months looking for a job. You need to go interview."
Good old
Yeah.
Grandpa. Well, I think it's interesting because this is the late 70s, obviously, if he started in 79. So this is probably the mid 70s because it sounds like he started working for somebody else.
Yep.
But back in the 70s, it was kind of a little bit more like there were the trades, and then you said your dad went to Northern Kentucky, so he had a degree. So honestly, for your grandfather to push him to just get a freaking job with his degree, a lot of times that wasn't the case. They were like, "You better put that degree to work because I paid for it."
Exactly. Yeah. So it was cool because then when my dad got into the business, he was realizing like, man, other plumbers aren't like me. They weren't back then clean cut. It was the stereotypical plumber, exceptional tradesmen, like could fix anything, which my dad couldn't. He was brand new to the trade.
Well, I cut you off. I'm sorry. Finish your story. So he finds your grandpa tells him, "Quit sitting around the house." And does he take this plumbing job then?
Took the job. He was in the office for a short time, like a year. This guy walks into, and this guy was a character. It's long story short. This guy says, "Hey, Barry, guys are getting laid off everywhere." So Dad's like, "All right, he needs to meet with me. I'm done. I got to find another job." Owner meets with him and says, "Hey, we want to name the company the Jolly Company, and we want you to work in the field." And he's like, "What?" So he goes, "Okay." After some conversation, come to find out, this guy was a union shop. He was trying to kind of dodge the union by starting a company not with his name on it. And he thought Dad was a great communicator, somebody who could be a good face of the company. So hold on a second. This is the Jolly Company. This isn't even Jolly Plumbing. That's the Jolly Company he didn't own even a percent of it. It was just named after him. So he's going around town now in the field plumbing, learned how to plumb about a year in. He's like gung-ho about it. It's like name on the truck. Pretty cool. Well, that company started to kind of unravel. And like I said, he was realizing like, man, I'm different than these guys.
Hold on. So like if this company's starting to unravel and his name is on it, is there a misconception that it is his?
Very much so. And he had to fight that in the transition when he started his own business. Now when this happened, this is in Alexandria, Kentucky, about 15 minutes south of us, kind of a small country town, small population. So word got around, what was going on. And he was sending letters out. He was spreading the word. Hey, I'm starting my own business. This has nothing to do with me. It was just named after me. We're now starting Berry Jolly Plumbing. It used to be called Berry Jolly Plumbing.
And he, even though the Jolly name had kind of gone a little bit sideways, he was still comfortable enough to try again.
Totally. And the thing that they did at this previous company, they took care of customers. There wasn't issues with customers. There was issues with, like, obviously this guy's trying to dodge the union. That's not great, right? There was some tax stuff. There's a bunch of different things like that. So the good thing that he had going for him, they knew that, like, Berry Jolly working and running this company was taking care of customers. And he had that good reputation going into starting his own business. And that is kind of what that's what propelled us into being able to run a really good business, was just like, hey, I'm going to take care of customers at all costs, above and beyond,
Well, he recognized, probably because he had, I assume, a business degree from Northern Kentucky. He probably recognized things like customer service, human resources. Those are the nice things that a college foundation gives you. I went to college. I've kind of morphed into one of those people right now who believe that college isn't necessary anymore, especially with how powerful the trades can be. But the one nice thing a college education does is it gives you that foundation. You got a little bit of finance, you got a little bit of HR, you got a little bit of marketing, you got a little bit of all those core things that probably helped him out a little bit, I would assume. And I know you can't really answer on his behalf, but I would think that helped. But so was it just him and your mom in the beginning?
Yeah, just him and my mom at our house. So growing up, I have 4 older sisters, so I came a little later, but my sisters very much remember, like, the technicians lining up in the hallway. My mom would be sitting in the laundry room dispatching them. I remember a little bit of that. By the time I really was old enough to remember, we did have a little office.
So pretty quickly he grew. It wasn't just him.
Very, very much so. Yeah. His first ever employee, Wayne, happened like within 6 months. Wayne still works for us today, 45 years later.
Oh, that's cool.
Really cool. There was a kid on his street and started working for him when he was 15, and Wayne still's here 45 years later. It's awesome.
Okay. So you come around, well, your parents have the company, it's growing. They're still kind of running it out of the house. It sounds like, if you and your sisters remember handing out service tickets to guys in your hallway. Yep. At what point does it grow into a company where, like, okay, they get their own shop?
Yeah. So through like the 80s and late 80s, early 90s, he wasn't like he ever thought, all right, I'm going to grow this to have 50 trucks on the road. But he would always find, he wanted to give exceptional customer service. And he'd always find, he's 2 or 3, 4 days out with work. Great problem to have. But he's like, man, this isn't very good customer service. Like, somebody's got a water heater leaking and we're working these crazy long days, but we can't get to them for 4 days. What kind of service is that? So he's like, we got to get another truck, get another truck. That would happen again. Get another truck. It was organic growth over that first 15, 20 years.
So you come along in 2014-ish. You go to Northern Kentucky as well. You get a degree in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And actually, degree in entrepreneurship, to me, I wish that degree existed when I went to college, because that's just the same way I'm wired. When I went to school in the early 90s, you were born in 92, I think, if my math is right.
91, yeah.
91. Okay. So I graduated from high school in 1990. I went in the U.S. Navy for 4 years. And then as soon as I got out of the Navy, I went to college, because people told you you're not going to get a job without a degree. It's the only reason I went. I hated school. But my brain is always all over the place, and I loved entrepreneurship stuff. I knew I wanted to start my own business. And in college, they had, it was like a 2-credit entrepreneurship class, and that was all that was available. So when you go to school some 20 years later, what does entrepreneurship teach you as a full-blown degree? Like, what is the core foundation of that education?
Yeah, well, Jeff, probably a lot of the reasons that you like that class is the reason I liked the entrepreneurship program. There's not as many walls in the entrepreneurship program. It's creative and free flowing. A lot of the professors were entrepreneurs themselves, and they would be a professor just as like a side gig, which that was like super appealing to me,
Yeah, for sure.
It was bits and pieces of every part of a business. So rather than getting an accounting degree, we had, like accounting for a small entrepreneur business where you're just started it and now you got to figure out how to use QuickBooks. And what's that like? You're going to be the one doing a lot of the accounting yourself, you're not working for a big five firm in accounting, which the accounting degree would teach you, right?
And you can't afford to go out and hire an accountant at that point. You got to figure out, you can eventually, but you still got to figure out the core of that on your own.
Yep. So a lot of it was that. It was like, okay, day one, we start a business, working through a business plan. We start a business. What do we need to have? What type of relationship? So what's the banker relationship going to do for us? And what would that be like? Let's talk about lending. You're going to go get a loan. What to look for there? Accounting type of things, management type stuff. All right. When do you make your first hire? When's that appropriate? How do you delegate?
At Service Titan, we know running a contracting business is hard work. With our all-in-one solution for the trades, managing your business needs from scheduling to invoicing is easier than ever. Learn how Service Titan gives you the tools to keep your business running smoothly. Visit servicetitan.com. Once again, that's servicetitan.com.
Because, of course, we had to take the other classes as part of our degree, but it just felt more common sense and like real. Like I'm sitting here picturing, hey, in a couple of years, I'm going to be taking over this business. I knew I wanted to do that. And what am I really going to be up against? And
yeah, I'm jealous that you got to do that. I'm literally jealous. You said already at that time, you knew you wanted to take over the business when you were taking these entrepreneurship classes. So you're in high school, you're going to Northern Kentucky and you get into this, you enroll in the entrepreneurship. I'm kind of surprised that you said you already knew you wanted to take over the business, because with that degree, I would have thought you were already thinking somewhere else. I don't want to run the family business.
Yeah. So from the time I was really little, I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be in the family business. One thing that we have going on too, and my dad kind of in the 90s broke off from the plumbing business and started doing commercial real estate, and really primarily focused through the early 2000s up until kind of I took over the business. He still does today, focuses on commercial real estate. And I thought I was going to take the same path. In fact, kind of did out of college, really got deep into the commercial real estate game. And that's a longer story we can talk about in a minute, but that was kind of my thinking there. I was always entrepreneurial growing up. I was the guy at high school and middle school, like buying candy bars and selling them out of the locker and we grew up on a golf course, selling golf balls up at the green and that sort of stuff. But I just wanted to know, all right, what can I leverage this business that's already built and it's a great business? I want to be able to leverage it into more. Back then, I didn't know what that was. I thought it was commercial real estate and I thought it was growing the business. I didn't know what else, but I wanted to learn how I could leverage that.
And so it was something you always wanted to do, which surprises me because a lot of times kids growing up in a family business, it's the exact opposite. But you also made it sound like your dad is pretty much an entrepreneur as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, growing up, it was the only money that ever was made by the family was made, from something
wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, it was it. Like, and honestly, the plumbing business growing up, if you were willing to pay the hourly rate, we would do anything, anything and everything. So it kind of sometimes would go beyond plumbing. He was always flipping. He always had a house he was flipping, or a commercial property he was doing something on. So we kept it interesting. It wasn't just plumbing.
When you come in whether we call it 2014 or 2017, when you actually take it over, you buy it in 2017. The foundation of this business, to me, it sounds like it was already extremely successful and there wasn't much room for improvement, or am I wrong?
Okay, yeah. So how I would explain Jolly Plumbing, especially in like 2014, it was an awesome company ran by the owner and like one or two other people, and they were doing a lot. They had all kinds of hats. It was topped out on their capacity of what they could have done without building more of a leadership team, without scaling and delegating. It was like the old school business where there's 2 or 3 people in the office doing everything. They're answering the phones, they're doing the dispatching, they're handing the tickets to the guys in the morning. There was no technology. We were still punching clocks in 2014 with a punch clock, with the old, you know what I mean? The green clock.
Exactly what you mean.
Yeah, we were still doing that, in 2014. So the nuts and bolts were there. We had awesome customers, awesome employees, really good relationships in the community, but we didn't really have things set up to scale the business. And at that time, we were like 70% commercial. which today, fast forward, 13 years or 11 years since 2014, we're 95% residential.
Did your dad, Barry, recognize that he was kind of set up this way and was just burned out and didn't feel like changing, or?
Yeah, very much so. So like I always say, like, I think that he could have written a book about how to run the perfect home service business. And because he was running after a lot of this commercial real estate stuff, he was satisfied with what the business was giving him. He was the dad that was home at 2:30 or 3 to see us get off the bus. Never, I was a basketball player, baseball player growing up, never missed a game my whole life, So that was very important to him. And because of that, he was just satisfied with where the company was. And I would say I have 4 older sisters. We never really knew what that was going to be like. I kind of always envisioned maybe running the business with them. By the time I came along, he was like ready. Like the business was kind of on cruise control. He was in there, but there was a couple of leaders there that were doing most of the things. Didn't have a huge desire to grow at that time. So when I came in, it was like, it wouldn't have mattered if it was me or somebody else. Somebody with energy and passion and putting their foot on the gas pedal, it was set up for growth.
Are your sisters involved or no?
No, none of them
Not
are.
at all. Just no interest.
Just never had any interest. It was challenging back then. Yeah, there was only a couple people in the office. I kind of had to work out in the field quite a bit, and they didn't really have much interest in that.
I think you were in a good position. I tell you, for a lot of reasons. Number one, being able to purchase the business from your father, due diligence isn't a huge concern. Okay. No. you know what you're getting. The second part of that is the capital to be able to fund an acquisition like that, I assume was also worked out because you're his son.
Favorable. Family discount.
Yeah, favorable is a good way. That's proper word. Yeah.
Yeah. So he just financed the business to me over a 15-year period. So very favorable, very favorable terms. It worked out for both of us.
And with your background in entrepreneurship, though, you had to realize that things like cash flow, financing, things like that are oftentimes the largest obstacles for a new business. But the good thing is you were able to kind of step right in, get something established. You're basically, it was an acquisition. You acquired your family's business, which is a fortunate and a good position to be in. So you get in there in 2017, you recognize that there's these things that are, let's just call them outdated, for lack of a better term. Yeah. What do you do first?
Yeah. So, man, the first thing, like literally the first week, we got rid of that punch card, and you would have thought that I was like flipping the whole company upside down. Some of the women in the office, particularly my aunt who worked in the office, was not happy, man. They weren't happy. So just at first, I mean, that sounds so basic, but like that was a big deal. It was like, hey guys, we're going to go to a digital punch card. We're going to go to, then a few months later, we're going to get a software, we're not going to be printing out paper tickets. Everybody's going to get an iPad, and we're going to take payment from customers in the field. We're going to minimize our AR. We're not going to bill every customer, in
your head, like in your head as a 20-something, this is probably easy implementation, but recognizing, because you already told me you have basically your first employee still on staff, and you're talking about digital punch cards and iPads in your vans. Is the training and implementation on this actually something where you're like, all right, time out. I didn't realize.
Oh yeah. Horrible. So we moved into a new building right around that time that I was taking over management. In our building, we have a basketball court. So it was all under construction, but the basketball court was being done. Okay. So we had this huge company meeting, and it was a really transformative period for our company, because it was like, we're in this awesome new space. It's going to be way different looking than any other plumbing space. It was very much like the turning of the page to like new generation of the company. We're in there, and I'm like laying out what we're going to do. Technology, and I'm excited about it. I'm like, all this technology, efficiency, we're going to be like, and by the way, a lot of this is coming from my dad. Like, hey, you should do this. You should do this. Why don't we try this? But he's like, not
You're
really
the scapegoat.
at that time. Yeah, it wasn't like that. It was just, he wasn't really having the time or energy to want to fool with it. So he's like, if I was you, I'd do this. And I'm like, sweet, let's do it, So I'm unrolling all these things. At that time, we had 20 employees. And we're going over all this stuff. I'm pumped. So at the end, I said, hey, I understand if there's people that don't want to be here because of that. Like, totally understand if you're just used to how it's been. Just let's have a conversation about it. Just please communicate, and we'll talk about it. So over the next like couple months, we went from 20 employees down to like 11 quickly.
So you did have that type of pushback. They're just like, I'm not doing this.
Yep.
I'm surprised a little bit by that, because the vibe I'm getting from you, and I would assume your dad was similar, is you probably had a pretty good company culture.
Yeah. You know, I think that our culture's changed so much, because back then, and I think this is the trades in general, we were so like the technicians, it was like everything was about the customer, period. Doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. and their faucet's dripping. If they think it's an emergency, like get there ASAP and drop everything and go there. That created like that, and just like figure it out, like whatever it takes, figure it out, that type of thing, which we still have that type of culture.
Pushing the pressure onto the employee.
Yeah. We
some
kind of
degree.
honestly, we flipped that on its head over the last 5 or 6 years, to where everything we do is associated to making a happy employee, happy work environment. That way they are going to take care of the customers even better. You know, you don't want an upset technician rolling into a customer's house. That's the worst thing you can have.
Yeah, because that trickles right to the customer.
Yeah, we want the happiest employees ever, who are just like on and on about how much they love their job and
How did you do that?
Jolly.
By building a basketball court?
Well, I used to think I thought that was what it would take. I thought culture was built by having a cool office and a lot of good snacks at the snack cooler.
Been influenced by Google.
Right. But that's part of it. You know, you walk in here and you're like, oh my gosh, this place is different. This isn't a plumbing company. But man, it's so much more than that. We finally, about 5 years ago, we were struggling with turnover. It was probably our biggest problem. Like everybody else, we kept saying, well, if we could just find people, we could grow. If we had enough people, we could grow. And finally, like as a leadership team, we're just looking at each other like, man, if we keep saying this year after year and we're not solving it, like what kind of leaders are we? You know, so we went on a mission to solve that. We hired a recruiter. Probably most people would have said a lot earlier, like we were a lot smaller company than what you would typically hire a recruiter for. But we hired a recruiter and merged her role quickly into just employee experience manager. All she does is focus on the employee experience and the culture. That's a huge part of it.
2020?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yep, 2020, and now she's employee experience manager, all things employee happiness.
How many employees do you have currently?
We have about 60 now.
Is one of the largest obstacles when you're a good sized plumbing company like you guys are in the plumbing trades, once you get trained up, so to speak, depending on what state you're in and how the licensing works, you realize like, well, why am I working for a guy when I can be working for myself?
Totally. Yeah. The way that we lose most of the employees that we want to keep, you know, sometimes you lose guys and you're like, okay, that's fine. But when it hurts, the guys that leave and we really want to keep, the main reason is they're starting their own business. So for us, it'd be hypocritical to say, hey, don't start your own business. You know, I'm an entrepreneur and I think it's been awesome for me and my family. So when that happens, I just ask the guys to be upfront and honest and give us plenty of time and notice, and don't be out stealing our customers. You know, I'll help and support them as much as I can. I told you about, we used to be a lot more commercial than we are now. And we even refer a lot of our commercial work when we get it to other guys who used to work for us.
I did a podcast recently with a plumber in upstate New York, and he had a really interesting attitude on this. He said, if they can go out on their own and be successful, which I want them to be, that just means there's plenty of work for all of us, and I don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, that's super refreshing to hear. And it is, I guess, where we are in northern Wisconsin. You were talking about that you're in kind of a smaller area. I'll define small. We're like 1,500 people. So we're probably smaller than where you are.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't get a plumber, to your point, to come for 2 or 3 days, you know, which is how it was when you said your dad was trying to get rolling and, you know, you got a leaking water heater and 2 or 3 days isn't going to cut it. That's kind of the way it is around here. So you probably couldn't get enough plumbers to take work away. Is that a similar circumstance where you are, or is there supply and demand kind of on the same curve?
Yeah, we've seen a shift in that. So especially as we've expanded into Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a really good market for plumbing and plumbing, heating, and air companies. There's awesome companies here in town, and the competition's stiff. You know, if you look at like Google paid ads is a good way to, you know, how expensive is it to get a click, that type of thing. We're an expensive market compared to Midwest. We're one of the most expensive markets for getting like a plumbing click. So it's competitive. I would say in Northern Kentucky, we have really good market share in Northern Kentucky. Whereas in Cincinnati, we're still, it's hard. You got to scratch and claw for every call.
Talking about plumbing clicks, is that your primary marketing?
Not really. No, we're big brand marketers. Over the years, we've pumped a lot of money into our brand, just brand awareness. You know, the challenging thing about that is you put, you know, billboards all over. Our slogan's "A flush beats a full house," has been for 40 years. And people like that. It's just caught on around here. And we post that everywhere. It's like you meet somebody, they figure out my name, last name's Jolly. It's always like "A flush beats a full house." You know, people know that. So we like to pump that out. It's a lot of brand awareness. And then other than that, we do a lot of community marketing. So I often say, if you drive up and down our highways here, you know, billboard after billboard after billboard, whether it's us or any of our competitors, that doesn't feel great having to market like that, you know, just pumping money into these $5,000 a month billboards on the highway and, you know, trying to get, you know, and how these other competitors of ours are bigger than us. They're spending more money on marketing than us. Like how, you know, I often wonder how much impact that has. So we've challenged ourselves to try to get back to our roots on marketing where we used to be. You know, back in the day, Dad was sponsoring baseball teams. He was on the signs at high schools around the area. Things like that. We're like, hey, can we do that on a large scale and actually make an impact with it? So we actually, our vision statement is about that. It's about how much money we want to invest in the community through advertising.
I love that you just said that. So 20 years ago, I don't know if you know the background of Cole Publishing. We owned the Wet Show. At the time, It was called the Pumper and Cleaner Expo. And I used to regularly do marketing talk because it's just one of the things I'm passionate about. And 20 years ago, I recommended to pumpers and plumbers and cleaners to sponsor their local sports teams. And I said, the reason for this is the parents are doing the laundry and seeing your logos on all of these, whether it's a hockey jersey or a basketball jersey or a baseball jersey, or they're watching their kids play, and you're subliminally making them remember that they're supporting their kid.
Yep.
And in my opinion, there's two things that get to people quicker than anything is their kids and their dogs.
Yeah,
you know,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I was pushing people 20 years ago to support through marketing their local sports teams. So maybe your dad went to my session way back when, highly doubtful, or
exactly. Well, we've been taking it a step further. Like we say, hey, we'll sponsor your team, but you have to sign up to come to a video shoot with your team after the season or during the season. So they'll bring their trophies down or you know, they got like, and they're like, we do these like kind of like, you know, MLB, they're like kind of posing in front of the camera, acting cool. Like,
and that gives you social media content too, which as a plumbing company, like how much social media content do I want to watch about you actually doing plumbing? The answer is not a whole hell of a lot.
None. Yeah, none.
Yeah.
And I would say the other marketing thing to that point, we have an in-house video crew, which for a company our size, I think is abnormal. So we have two people, they work for us primarily, and all they do is videos. So we do about 20 social media videos a month.
If you're willing to share it, what is your rough marketing budget per month?
Yep. So we spend about $800,000 a year in marketing. It's about that's going to be about 8%, 7.5% of our revenue. So, you know, boiled down monthly, what is that? $60-some thousand.
Is that percentage wise, like how much of that's going to Google? Probably more than half.
A lot. I don't think it's half. I guess off the top of my head, maybe 30-33%, something like that.
Yeah, I was figuring $1,000 a day, and you said 60 grand a month, which is how I was doing the math in my head at roughly half. But you know, it's interesting because Google, especially in the service industry, can be such a challenge because Google is a company in its own built to make money. So if you don't have a Google professional on staff or meaning on a 1099 or hire, you know, like third party, Google's always telling you to spend more, spend more, spend more. And that's why you're not performing like you're supposed to, which is really just Google being Google. You really have to understand what you're doing. And a lot of plumbing companies, that doesn't sound like you're one of them, have gotten caught up in these massive Google spends that they really aren't even sure if are paying off.
Yeah, the pay-per-click, and I'm by no means a Google expert, but the pay-per-click is just a slippery slope because you're just funneling so much money. And we find that our brand, we're able to outperform other companies on that because we've built so much of our brand. It's like if you just rolled into a new market, nobody knew you, you're not going to, those clicks, you're still paying for them, but they're not going to convert, right? So we worry about the conversion of our clicks because that is an indication of the strength of our brand.
Your brand, like, it's not anything now for plumbing companies. They all have a wrap. You're
Sure.
all wrapping your vans and you've got your rolling billboards. People understand that that's marketing 101 in the service business. One random thing I saw at your website, what the hell was that bus?
All that was we do transit ads. So our local, it's called Tank Bus. It's like our local transit company, bus company, and we just wrap buses. So we've done that for years.
That's smart too, though. So because you can only have so many service vans running around, but the buses are on nonstop back and forth routes all over the city. So smart.
Yeah. And they change their routes. They change their routes weekly. So 1 week you're at one part of town, another week you're another part of town, which is something we like.
Going back to 2020, you start implementing all these changes. Well, actually going back before 2020, but in 2020 is when you recognize, okay, we're having turnover problems. Technology has been kind of like something we haven't embraced. At what point did you feel like you turned the corner in the right direction?
Yeah. So in 2018, we went to upfront pricing. We were hourly before that. Primarily,
what year? Sorry,
2018.
You went to like a flat rate book?
Flat rate, yep. And most of that was because we were so much commercial that we were having a hard time balancing that flat rate book with commercial and residential. So by that time, we were at least 60, 70% residential, and we thought it was a good time to do it. So we did that. That was pivotal. We also joined Nexstar. Are you familiar with Nexstar?
Yeah, Nexstar is basically, Frank Blau started Nexstar, and he was the grandfather of flat rate pricing.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So we joined Nexstar. That was a pivotal moment for us. Just systems and processes wise, I worked at Walmart for 2 months in high school. Other than that, this is the only job I've ever had, really, so I'm just trying to figure it out. So when we joined Nexstar, like going to these meetings and learning from other companies that are doing the exact same thing that I'm trying to do, sometimes it feels impossible when you're in the seat of the owner and you're like, man, how are we going to do this? I've got these aggressive growth goals, but I barely even know how to run a company the size we are now,
Right.
So learning from people that had done it before me was massive. And then in 2021, we started our HVAC department, which was pivotal. Around that time, we also really leaned into the sewer department and flipping leads to do more sewer digs, underground sewer. We've always done underground, but we never really pushed it. And we really built some good processes around that in like 2021. Probably a longer answer than you want, but those are the few things that were pretty pivotal for us.
No, I was just kind of asking when you felt like, hey, we've successfully implemented all of these or most of these ideas that I felt would bring us, into where I want to be as a company. Now those are implemented. Are you guys running kind of on cruise control now, or is there always something where you think like we can improve that process?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. You would think like I would have thought we'd be at that point by now, but it always feels like there's something. There's always something that we can improve. Really, when we're tracking, we really track our KPIs closely, and what we've found is, so like right now we're working on plumbing conversion rate. So our plumbing conversion rate was really good in like 2023. We went and focused on like our turnover percentage in HVAC, and we're focused on that. And then our plumbing conversion rate drops. So we're going back to that. Maybe when we focus on that, our sewer install, our sewer sales, close percentage or average sale might decrease. It feels like we're always chasing these KPIs, and it's challenging to keep them all up all at the same time.
What do you guys do for customer retention? Like after the fact service, are you using software to do follow-up or?
Yeah. So this year is kind of a pivotal moment for that too. So we use Service Titan, but we started using Chirp So Chirp, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am not. So please educate me. That's a new one
Cool.
for me.
Chirp's awesome. I'd highly recommend it. There's a competitor called Hatch, very similar. Those are the two big ones. We started using it in December. So say we go to 60 jobs today, some close, some don't. Some we offer solutions that may not be chosen by the customer. We might go for a toilet and offer a water heater and a bunch of other stuff that the customer needs, and they might just go for the toilet, right? So what Chirp does, it reaches out to the customer via text. It's an automated AI service. It goes in, Service Titan, looks at everything going in there. Unclosed opportunities, it texts the customer about unclosed opportunities. So it's a drip campaign. So send them a drip campaign. Hey, we gave you an estimate on a water heater. Have you considered the estimate? We can set it up however we want. Maybe we say, hey, after 2 weeks, let's offer them a 10% discount on that water heater that we offered them.
How are your customers reacting to those unsolicited text messages from you? Or
They
don't you
opt
care? And
in.
I don't mean that to sound in an aloof way, but
Yeah. Well, we don't want our customers, we don't want to contact our customers like we owe them money, right? They're our customers. We want to make sure it's a good opportunity for them, but it's good because a lot of it is deals related. So, hey, if the opportunity didn't close day one, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll send them a deal. Hey, thanks again for using us. Now that, we're offering a 10% discount on that water heater, or we're offering buy one, get one free toilets, whatever it may be.
So you really haven't had any negative feedback from that?
We haven't. And we have about 80 campaigns set up in there for various different things. And it can contact the customers. We do happy calls. So every single customer, we actually call on the phone. This is a non-sales. We're not trying to sell anything. Hey, Jeff, I saw that Tino was out at your house yesterday. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everything's good to go. Did we get you taken care of?
Yeah. If they say, we're big on if customers are experiencing something difficult in their life, our call center is amazing at, sending flowers, sending handwritten notes, those sort of things. We really like that extra touch.
You're 33, 34 years old. You got a lot of years ahead of you. What do you see 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think that when I started in this business, it was most of our competitors and obviously us. We were single trade, single location. Saw very quickly things were going to multi-trade, single location, most companies. And now we're seeing multi-trade, multi-location, and I think with especially how competitive our market is, that if we want to grow and hit a lot of the growth goals that we want, we need to expand in our location. So that's kind of the next chapter for us. We still have electric out there that I think we could eventually start. But really it's going to be multiple locations.
30 years from now, are you building this business for acquisition or succession, or you don't know yet?
I don't know, man. It's so hard. It's so easy to sit here and say, hey, I'd never sell this. And, we're going to run this thing forever. And that's how I've always felt. But it's just hard to ever say, right now is a crazy time with all the private equity and everything that's happening in our business, and I really don't have much of an appetite for that. But what I do have an appetite for is partnering with other really good businesses. The dream of mine would always be to kind of run that, and try to be the platform for that and try to grow by acquiring other businesses and bringing other good partners on board. So never know. I think it'd be really cool if this was in my family forever. But it's hard to say. Hard to say what opportunities come across.
Learn more about Jolly Plumbing at jollyplumbing.com. Please be sure to like and subscribe to keep more great interviews like Brady's coming your way.